everyone. I'm Galvan, the proud superintendent of the Greenfield Union School District, right here on the Central Coast of Monterey County, California. I am a product of my fabulous Greenfield community. I have the honor of serving 3,500 students in grades preschool through eighth grade.
Hi, I'm Georgianne Warnock. I'm the proud superintendent of Terrell ISD. We are a community located about 30 miles east of Dallas, and we serve approximately 5,200 students across 9 campuses.
Hi, I'm Rick Cobb. I'm the superintendent of Middale Public Schools in Midwest City, Oklahoma. We have about 13,000 students across 19 school sites.
Okay, great. So the first question I have for you is, how has the prevalence of technology in the classroom impacted student learning and engagement?
Absolutely. So, technology is absolute tools to allow our students to manifest whatever they want to share with their teaching and learning platforms. And so, prior to the pandemic, we were already a one-to-one school. We had Chromebooks, we had them in every school. And then now we're moving to particular grades integrating the iPads with our partnership with Apple Education, and also with Google in Education. And so, really proud to have that integration in all of our classrooms. But what does that mean? It means doing things differently with a tool and not just regurgitating content like you would on a worksheet. We absolutely want them to do authentic project based learning projects to really understand how they want to demonstrate their learning. So, in every one of our classrooms, we have collaborative spaces. No longer do we have desks in rows. We absolutely have tables, barista type tables, circular tables, rectangular tables in every single space throughout our district from preschool all the way through eighth grade. And in those spaces, students are able to collaborate on tech projects. And so integrating some of the tools that we already have through a platform of presentations, through collaboration, through communication, creating different types of outcome based learning that they'll do with their teachers. And then, of course, presenting those to the classroom. So I see technology as a tool, not a replacement of, but something that can be utilized to demonstrate their talents. I would agree. And so, what we also have integrated in all of our spaces is collaborative conversations and cooperative learning structures. And so, what our students are asked, we have them oftentimes in pairs or in fours. And one of the platforms we really integrated and invested in is Kagan Cooperative Learning. And so, students are in those spaces and they number off 1 through 4. They take turns speaking, they take turns standing up and communicating to the whole room. One of the things that we know historically with just people, human nature is not there's not a lot of people that want to do public speaking. Not a lot of people have that confidence, and it's quite a bit of a fear for many. And so we want to teach our kids young, from preschool all the way through, that it's okay to get in front of a room. You're going to get feedback, and it's just a natural, given thing that you do. And so they're called upon through an equity-based model, oftentimes to stand up and speak and communicate what they've learned or what their progress is in that learning demand.
Yeah, that is a great question because we know that technology can be used for good or for evil, right? As it's coming into the classrooms. So one thing when I think about the pandemic, that really silver lining for us was being able to rapidly accelerate the tools that we were able to bring into our classrooms. That really brought in a digital world that we did not have in our mostly rural district prior to the pandemic. So that's been really a beauty, but also learning how to navigate that, how to use the tools that we have in the district versus the tools that students are bringing in their own pockets. That creates just a lot of challenge and opportunity that we hadn't seen prior to the pandemic, at least in our district.
So when the pandemic hit us in 2020, we weren't ready at all to pivot to remote learning. And since then, we've gone one-to-one with the help of ESSER funds. And over the last 3 years, it's been an amazing transformation from all the things that we couldn't do to all the things that we're doing now. We have students and parents and teachers, probably in that order. Maybe flip that, teachers ahead of parents in terms of their proficiency using our learning management system and just knowing where to go for information and how to use it. We have teachers that spend every summer since that time learning how to make the LMS more dynamic, and so that we're not just copying the content that was in an analog form in the classroom, a book, a worksheet, whatever, into Canvas. Now we're actually, creating content specifically for that digital space.
Excellent. Excellent answer. I love that. So, Superintendent, the next question I have for you is how can school districts deal with social media issues that might originate on a social media app, but then creates a very real problem on campus, whether it's the same day, in person, or Monday morning when we go back to school?
Sure. So I'll start there. So there's two sides of it, right? There's the negative aspects and there's the positive aspects. One thing that we use when we encounter negative aspects, and oftentimes it's in the secondary setting when kids are tape recording something that's happening in class or across the nation. Middle school right now is a challenging time in a young person's life, and they're trying to figure out, where their placement is, how they're going to be when it goes on to high school. They're coming off of an elementary campus, and now all of a sudden middle school happens to them. And so we had some issues with students using their cell phones, as well as we saw that all over. There was some fights with them, and they were recording right away. Everybody's grabbing their phone to record it, or recording of teachers and lessons in class without their permission and so forth when things were happening. And so, what did we do? We addressed it right away and we called some parent meetings together because what we found is that students were on their cell phones in a non productive way. And we did have, and we currently still have, a no cell phone policy that will interrupt learning. Now, there are ways that many of our teachers are fabulous with integrating the cell phone technology through random numbering or through demonstrating knowledge and so forth. And that's still a productive way. But we also found that people were using it in a non-productive way. And so we addressed that. We talked about it, and they're only taking them out when it's part of the lesson that's integrated in a productive way. And so therefore, now we're back to teaching and learning and demonstrating because they all have their Chromebooks. They all have an iPad. So there is your technology integration to make sure they're using it in a very positive manner. So when we encountered it negatively, we educate, we teach them on smart social media. We educate also our students around the digital footprint. When you put something out on social media, it's a digital footprint that stays there forever unless someone takes it down. So now you are, when you move on and you're going to want to look for that, career, or you do that background check when employers do that, things might come up. So we're educating them the best that we can, as well as our adults, in that sense. So that's the negative part of it. But I will tell you about the positive one with the integration of technology and the phone and, their tablets and so forth. We have kids, video recording each other with their presentations. They're coming up with solutions to problems, real world problems. They're also part of our team when we have like a student cop good that wants to put something on the social, they'll go and capture a moment and they'll share it with us. So we go through that, we put that on our social media, and we try every single site, every single day is posting something positive about what's happening in their school, as well as administration. So if you went and looked for the Greenfield Union School Digital Footprint and you looked at our, schools and what's out there, it's a lot of positive. And so what we believe in Greenfield is we create our story. Because if you don't create your story, someone else will create it for you. And not necessarily will it be in a positive light. And so if you were to look on any one of them here today, you'll see some really great things happening in our classrooms. And that's a positive with the socials.
Yes. And we have seen that play out with things big and small in our community. So I'm going to talk about kind of two different examples of things that we've seen play out. So, one is, I think something we've seen across the country is a really scary threat being made on social media about the safety of students or the well-being of a campus. And that's like the big thing that we have to manage. And then I think in smaller doses, but no less disruptive to the campus itself is, a couple of kids starting some, back and forth, sometimes starts off as something funny and it escalates, or some of that cyberbullying that then we see move into the campus and come face to face in real time. And both of those have implications for how we're managing on the campus. I think when we have those social media threads, I think the relationship always is so important. A relationship where people can they know who to go to if they see a threat, and people are trained in that, see something, say something, that And they know, I mean, I will get a Facebook message at night, or our police officers will, that people know when they see that kind of thing, that they're able to confront it and let people know so that we can make the best decisions with the information that we have. I think that we're also really working with our parents on building social media awareness about what that means when your child says something, even if it's just in passing, or they thought it was funny, or it was a joke, what the real serious implications of that can be for the child and for the parent. So really trying to work on building that communication. So I think having relationships, that kids are going to come to you instead of going and having that negative exchange in the hall. If there was something that happened over the weekend that's coming into the school, that again, they have that relationship to be able to come and talk to their administrator or teacher or another trusted adult about what's happening and how it's impacting them.
So social media has become a real issue in our schools. It's one of the reasons that we've seen more of our schools opt to limit the use of personal devices during the school day. Basically, we've been telling kids that if you bring your phone to school, it's going to be in your locker. If it's seen out, it's confiscated, period. We give you a device that has all of the capabilities of all the things you need to do at school. You don't need to call or text your parents during class. You don't need to be texting each other. But more to the point of this question, you also don't need to be on social media during the school day. There are a lot of great uses for social media for students, but during the school day, we try to limit that as much as possible. We also try to teach digital citizenship because what we see in the after hours with social media is it's a space just like any other space where kids can meet up that's ripe for bullying and for other kinds of negative behaviors that do seep into the school day. Our leadership classes have done a really good job of teaching digital citizenship at our high schools, and we're trying to get more of that in our middle schools and our elementary grades as well. Trying to do more to inform parents about social media issues so that we're not trying to chase that down during the day. It becomes a real negative place for students at times. And so we're just trying to manage that through education, but then also focusing on instruction during the day and limiting access to social media.
That's terrific and such a smart idea. Can you provide some examples of how your students have used their social media in a positive and maybe even a productive way that could benefit themselves, their community, or in addition, maybe help them shine online to get into college in the future?
Oh, absolutely. So one thing I love is that our robotics team, this is just one example. So our robotics team, as they're coming together, that team each take on different roles. And so I was talking to them at one of their meets and I said, well, so what's your role? They said, I'm the social media manager. And I said, well, so what does that mean for your robotics team? Like, oh, well, I'm capturing, different clips of the events and as different teams compete. And I'm sharing all of that out on our Instagram or on our Twitter, and really using that to promote not only our campus, but all of the kids that we're competing with in our robotics championships. And I thought that is amazing, and a dedicated role to that. So we see that playing out a lot in our student organizations, where they have students that are helping to promote, different sales or to highlight different opportunities that the FFA club did or the football team. And so that's been really an exciting way to share the positive things that are happening, because too often it's negative that gets shared. And I've been really proud to see some of our students growing that. Another just great thing that one of our elementary team had started was We're the Tigers. So a podcast, and using social media to have the podcast, that's being shared. And that was from one of our elementary schools.
Yeah, our students, our high school students in particular, have done a really good job of using social media to market themselves. And I don't know who's taught them that. I don't know if that comes from their coaches, their parents. But I think that we have students that see the importance of building your brand early on. I mean, I hate to think of students as a brand, but at the same time, if you're trying to get a scholarship for track or basketball or softball or football or whatever, then you can get a lot of attention using social media as in addition to other recruiting tools that are out there. But we also have students promoting their fine arts programs, their fine arts productions, bringing more people from the community in to see those shows, and then to support the arts. And so you really can build a community brand as well with social media. But when students are using those tools to promote what's happening at the school, or in a lot of cases, what's happening with themselves, it can be a really just effective communication piece.
Love it. In the age of one-to-one, how are you preparing students for positive technology use in the classroom?
Yeah, so positive technology use is teaching them, educating them first and foremost. When we have tech in every one of our classrooms, there is a series of lessons that we go through to really make sure that our students know how to use it in a productive manner, that they're not going out on websites that they shouldn't be going on to. Plus, our filter isn't really going to allow them to do that, but they know that. And funny story is sometimes I'll have some of my fifth and sixth graders email me personally because you can find that, in our suite. And they'll say, Mrs. Galvan, can't you just turn on that chat function in Google Apps for Education? I just want to hang out with my friends during the summer, and certain things like that. And then we educate them on why we wouldn't want that or why we would want that, to let them know just about protection and the filters that are out there and what we don't want people to take their information with and use it in a non-productive or non-positive, not a positive way. And so all that education is really, truly important. And then from there, we start educating on the things that would be really great. And those would be your collaborative projects, your presentations, when they're taking a real world problem when it comes to some of the social demands that we're seeing out there in the world, that they start thinking, well, I have a voice. I'd like to talk about Black Lives Matter, or I want to talk about ethnic studies and myself represented in books and on platforms. So they start, as they grow through, have a very sound, productive, bold perspective on what they want the adults to know about kids.
Yeah, I think that it is an ongoing, repeated lesson all the time as we talk about digital footprint, digital citizenship, how we respond to what we're broadcasting and putting out, and then what that is doing and creating for ourselves and our own digital footprint. That future employers are going to be able to look and see at what you have put out online, and is that the best version of yourself that you want that future employer to see. Those are the kinds of conversations that we have to be having daily with our students. It's a different world.
Well, we know that a lot of our students are going to go on to college, careers, military, whatever it is, and they're going to be spending a lot of their day on a device as well. Even at our tech center, we're the only school district in Oklahoma that has our own career tech center. We're not just associated with a lot of other districts in a career tech district. We are the career tech district. And all of the trades, but that includes nursing and all kinds of different tech trades as well, there's still a digital component to it. And so knowing that after graduation, students are going to be, to some extent, online on devices, it's important to have them proficient users of those devices now. I think that we're also getting students used to finding information for themselves, not just coming into class and asking, what did I miss? And then when they get to college, if that's their path, then they already have a way to be in that constant communication loop with their professors, with their advisor, whoever else.
So the next question that a lot of districts are struggling is with, that I'd love your advice on, is how have you been successful in increasing parent engagement to help keep students safe on social media?
Yeah. So one thing that we're really proud of is our parent engagement component right here in Greenfield. So we have a director of community engagement partnerships, with a few other things within his responsibility, positive school culture and so forth. And then we also have at every one of our schools, we have principals that lead a lot of the family engagement together with two family and community liaisons. So every one of our schools have two people dedicated to family and community partnerships. And we also have at our central office, the director, as well as two people under him that help support that, along with counselors, social workers, teachers, and so forth. And so what we get to do is provide really great topics and presentations and workshops for our parents. And so one of the ones we do every single year is talking about social media and the kind of things that they should be aware of. And oftentimes our parents do not know what their kids are doing on their phone. And the phone is a possession of the family because oftentimes, the parents are paying that bill. So do you know what your kids are on and what are they looking for? And so we educate our parent community, who is a very trusting parent community, as many of us, with your own children are. But you need to be aware of some things. So several of the workshops throughout the district are about responsible use of cell phones, responsible accessing different sites, and things that parents can be aware of when it comes to students. And we did find, there was some bullying incidents that we discovered in our district with students on students or students recording with staff members. And so we had to address those quickly. We brought the family in, we brought the students in, and we educated on the spot. And then we turned that into an opportunity to educate others within the school community. Because oftentimes people don't think it's on my phone, I'm posting it, then no one else is going to see it. And there's not going to be that digital footprint now out there, unless it's a site, that it instantly removes, but somebody can still take a picture of it before it's gone with some of those sites. So all of that is an opportunity for us to educate our community.
Yeah, I think that we continue to work to engage our parents. We have, it's called Wednesdays with Warnock. So it's a Wednesday show that we put out every week. Facebook is still where we have the majority of our digital traffic for our parents. I think we've kind of trained them that that's where is going to be our go-to, even though we communicate in lots of other ways as well. So really working to connect with our parents in a regular format, in a regular way that we're pushing out information, and then working to build that digital literacy with our parents through some parent information nights, engagement nights, digital literacy tip sheets that we put out, the apps that you need to know about as a parent. So all of those kinds of efforts that we have to continually be engaging and educating ourselves and helping parents to be informed, things that they would have had no idea about, like calculator lock boxes or, apps that can, kids can hide things in that they might not want parents to see. So us being in front of that and then helping to share that information with our parents is one way we're working to keep them informed.
I would say that parent engagement is still an area where we need to do some more work. And sometimes work on the parents themselves. We see a lot of times parents go straight to social media to bypass channels. They go to the media or to social media. We had an incident happen earlier this month where an incident was recorded in the classroom. A parent tried to send me that through Facebook, through a DM on Facebook. Well, I don't know this parent. I'm not accepting a DM from somebody I don't know. And then a few days later, one of the TV stations sent us this video along with a couple of other videos. And at no point did this parent really just try to reach out to me, call my office, email me. It was just, let's go straight to social media with it. And apparently over the weekend, this video had been spurning around through social media. That's an extreme version of a story that's, tilted towards the negative, but it's not a one-of-a-kind story. There are a lot of cases where parents use social media to try to bypass communication with us or to try to force communication with us. Working with parents when we have in any kind of engagement, our Title I programs, our bond steering committee, we use social media to engage parents that way. But then we try to get them to face-to-face conversations. It's not a productive place to try to resolve differences and air out grievances. And so I think we need to do a better job of explaining that to parents. But unfortunately, the only time it really comes up with parents is where we're in the middle of one of those situations.
Yeah, that's not unlike other communities. Are there any stories that come to mind about any social media incidents you have been able to get in front of or avoid by being proactive?
Yes, absolutely. So I'll start with highlighting people. And so, oftentimes when schools are closed down, and I'll just go back to the pandemic, and we closed our school downs for over a year and a half. People were curious about what was happening behind the scenes. They were very curious about, well, what is the teacher doing? And when we brought them back to school, well, where are the plexiglass? Is there sanitation procedures? How are they doing the masking? Where are they distributing it? If a student's coughing, where are they going to be held in a sanitary environment before? So a lot of that was negative in the world. Like, how are schools truly going to keep kids safe? And our parents were so frightened to send them back to school. So we took on that as an opportunity to educate. And so what we did is we started some segments. We did a lot of Facebook Live when students were on campus. And as people were walking on, we utilized Facebook Live, Instagram Live to use that as an opportunity to educate and to show our parent community a backstage pass into what was happening. So I would go through classrooms, do live Facebook. The teacher would say hello. The children would say hello. Of course, we're checking all to make sure that they have permission to be on screen time, as well as our principals were taking tours through the campuses and in a positive light. We also took the opportunity, we hired a lot of counselors, and we hired social workers. And so parent community said, well, what are they going to do with our kids? So we interviewed them too. I do a segment every week on Friday. We release 60 seconds in GSD, 60 segundos en el comunidad de GSD. We do it in English and Spanish. And we just take anyone throughout the district and we interview them in 60 seconds on what their job is and what they're excited about and proud about. Today, I did 3 segments with our team. One was our ceramic arts and digital animation arts teacher who's showing the community what he's doing. So that's really cool that they get to see that. We did one with our counselors for our middle school who are getting ready to have promotion. So we showed our parents what to expect and what our counselors are excited about. And then one we did on summer camp recruitment. So we talked all about the fabulous things that are happening at summer camp and why would you not want to be here? And it's super simple. We do it with iMovie. It's our voice, my voice, I introduce, and they take the question, they talk about it, and then we do our voice stays and we just do nothing but still photos of like what kids are doing, videos, segments, pictures, and it's no more, it's about a 60-second clip that goes out. So that's our opportunity to really utilize social media in a very positive light, and to stay with that human connection. And the one last thing that I do every single night at 7 o'clock, I read bedtime stories to kids. And we just before we did an hour recording segment. Nobody really knows it. Kids think I read every single night on the time. So kids don't be listening to this right now. But I'll sit for an hour and record by a whole week's worth of stories. And I change my jacket, I'll change my shirt, those kinds of things. And it's a bedtime story to our kids, whatever the theme is. So like this theme for this month is Asian American, Pacific Islander, Hawaiian, as well as mental health awareness. So all the books that I'm reading to kids for bedtime story all this month of May has to do with those 2 themes. Yeah, so kind of just fun things in a positive light.
Yeah, we had an incident just this year where over 100 pizzas were ordered for an event in the district, and there was some kind of debacle. I don't know, we'll call it Pizzagate. But anyway, we didn't end up picking up the pizzas. And so this pizza place had opened up and made these hundreds of pizzas for an order that we didn't have any records of. So anyway, they went to social media and said, the school district and ordered these pizzas, and we brought our staff in. But because we have relationships in the community and with people, I mean, we didn't even know as a district that this order had been placed and that had happened until we got word that it was on social media. So we were able to go talk to the manager. We were able to make it right financially with them. We were able to they thankfully took the post down because we were able to talk about it. But that kind of thing about having relationships with people, that when that something starts negatively to blow up, that you're able to talk to them and at least, we're able to offer a different perspective, and that ended up okay. Pizzagate, was saved for this year.
Sometimes just by monitoring social media pages, we're able to find out what's happening in the community, what misinformation is out there. And misinformation comes in two buckets. You have this side, which are things that you can address and correct, and you have this side, which are things that involve personnel or legal matters where you just out of necessity have to stay silent. But when we see things in that first bucket, misinformation that we can correct, a lot of times we can go to the source. If it's a community page, we can just jump in and say, hey, what you're hearing is incorrect. Or if it's just an individual, we can look up their contact information and RSIS and call them and just say, hey, this is so-and-so with the school district. I saw that you posted this information. It's not correct. Let me tell you what's really happening. They're surprised to get that call, but when you're putting everything out into the public and it's not accurate, sometimes we're going to call you, and instead of calling you out publicly, we'll just call you.
Yeah, it's a lot of superintendents are doing that now, which I think is absolutely terrific. What would your advice be to educators and administrators to work together to create a culture of digital safety and responsibility in their schools?
Oh, yes. So I would say it is a huge responsibility for us, especially with so much of it every day. If you walk around a restaurant, if you walk into a community, if you walk into any space, everyone's on their phone. Like probably 90% of the people are on their phone, unless it's a classroom with kids that don't have both. But everyone's on the phone. And so, how do we use that to educate people about the smart use of it? So, yes, if we're capturing video, yes, if we're communicating, but not to lose sight of that human connection as well. And so, there's a really important balance. Whenever I'm in any space throughout the district, or leaders are in spaces, we are capturing photos of people caught doing some really great things, and we are posting that, absolutely. But the rest of the time, we should be engaged fully with folks and staying true to that human connection and making sure that they know we care. Because if I'm on my phone, that's a little rude and not really engaging and listening to the person on the other side. So we try to educate people on that fine balance of, yes, capture wonderful moments, post those wonderful moments, be smart about what you're using, what you're saying. Um, and then people will assume that positivity comes out of your district, but then also maintaining that human connection side. That honestly, the reason I did story time and the reason we did backstage passes, and the reason we did 60 seconds was all about human connection, because we were losing that. And we didn't feel that human to human vibe that we were so used to when we were all on, lockdown. So some of the things we do with that, really just to maintain that positivity.
I heard a speaker about 10 years ago say, imagine the worst 30 seconds of your career captured forever on YouTube. And I was just at the workshop. I was a facilitator. I wasn't really the audience, but I was off to the side, and that really caught my attention because the first years of my career would have been 30 years ago. So if you think about the early 90s, we weren't capturing everything digitally. There's nothing from that era of my teaching that's memorialized. And I'm just like any other educator. My first few years in the classroom were messy. My pedagogy was a work in progress. My classroom management wasn't fantastic. And I'm sure you could find 36 seconds from that time period that I wouldn't be particularly proud of. So as true as that was to hear that 10 years ago, think about where we are now with some of the newer social media platforms. You have smaller chunks of content that are easy to splice together and to piece into a video that really creates an image or creates a narrative that isn't exactly accurate. And as a teacher, or really as a public-facing person now, it's a little bit terrifying because there are opportunities for people who don't have good intentions at all to really misrepresent what somebody who spends their life trying to help kids is doing. And so you just have to be mindful of every moment. And so I have talked to teachers who found that to be an incredible amount of pressure. Not that they would ever intend to say or do anything inappropriate, but we've all done it. We've all said something that didn't come out exactly right, or that's easy to misinterpret, and if somebody wants to use that in a harmful way, it's pretty easy to do nowadays.
What's your biggest social media concern for the future?
Yeah, so a concern. I would say a concern is the use of it, like how it's used when it's negative. And so if like someone gets on social media and bashes someone else or bashes an organization, that's really harmful. Um, and as I've matured, we think about, okay, if they're going to bash the superintendent or they're going to bash the school, oftentimes it's not about the person or the place. It's about the person who's posting that and projecting their lived experience. As I've matured, I've learned a lot about human nature, and oftentimes it's never about you when people get angry. It's really about the circumstance and how do we get ahead of it. I am that superintendent that will immediately allow my team first through the chain of command to address it and to find resolution. And even if it is resolved, because if it's not resolved, it reaches my desk, with the meeting, absolutely. But when it is resolved, I still follow up with the phone call and say, thank you for bringing that concern to us. I'm really glad that, director so and so was able to address that. And we want you to know that we really care about your child and we appreciate you coming forward. And that kind of was like, whoa, like really? They actually took my concern and turned it into an opportunity to learn and to grow from it. And I think if we address situations like that in that manner, we would be more proactive and not so reactive to situations that happen. And again, always saying this is that person's lived experience when they want to be negative about something. And just recently, last week, we had a post about one experience in one school. It actually ended positive, but the parents still wanted to say something about it, and took to social media to bash the school even though it was resolved and it didn't make sense to us. But, human nature doesn't oftentimes make sense. And so a strategy for us is to contact the person, find resolution. We never ask anyone to take down whatever they did because it's their privy, if you want to keep it there. But then we saturate that school site with some positive things that are happening. So then we change the narrative. Like, look at that was one negative experience, but look at the hundreds of positive things that are happening. And oftentimes that allows us to drown out some negative voice that we had dealt with already. It's not like we didn't resolve it. We resolved it, but it was still human nature for someone to take to social media to say that. And that is, something that we see all around us. So a strategy, like how do you address that? We address it. Absolutely. But then we also take opportunity to say, hey, this school is doing some really phenomenal things. Let's show that too.
I think my biggest concerns really rely on the fact that more and more people are only getting their news and information from social media sites. And it really plays into the rise of this partisanship and like increasing polarization that we see. Versus really being able to have balanced media and being able to examine things critically from both sides, which I mean you can, but the algorithm in social media feeds your bend, right? So I'm just concerned about that as an overarching I wonder kind of where this will lead as people are increasingly exposed to one perspective or one view as algorithms trend certain ways. So I remain concerned about that. And I also just thinking a lot about artificial intelligence. There was some news out just today about just the leaders in that field and what they're cautioning our political leadership to be thinking about. And I think that is something, the rise of AI and how it will impact social media, what can be generated and shared, resembling your likeness, your word. I mean, I think there's a lot of that for us to be very thoughtful about.
My biggest social media concern in the future is that social media becomes even more difficult to manage. If you think about the prevalence of cloned social media accounts, or just deepfake videos. Even AI is going to introduce some problems as we continue to manage social media. Will the good outweigh the bad on the whole in the future, I think is the question that remains to be seen with social media.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, funding is difficult. What advice would you give to other districts to secure funding to create resources that parents need?
Yeah. So funding, you're right. Like we will, like California, that's our state. We have different funding formulas. We have a base formula that comes out to everyone. And then we have our LCAP, supplemental concentration funds. That's a little bit more for students that are, in that unduplicated count group. And then we have all these grants that are opportunities to build structure, not necessarily hire people because the grants will have a termination date, but to really think of positive things to do at every school through to enhance some of those opportunities. So for us, base and those supplemental funds that come through, we have vision, mission, and core values that culture and climate and community is important to us. Like that is just a given. So when these grant funds come and go, we still have a core mission and value to say we're going to care on people. We're going to highlight them in a positive way through social media. We hire our family and community liaisons at every school that their job is to highlight good things that are happening. Their job is also to engage our parent community in positive themes and positive topics. We also have some of our counselors, our behavioral health social workers that mitigate some of the trauma that kids are experiencing, also funded out of those. And so I tell you all that with the funding is because if it is a priority and it's close to your heart, you don't lose sight of that. And when money comes and goes, you still maintain it as a priority. You may not have as many if if cuts are cut in half, then we understand we have to downsize. But we will always have the core value mission of engaging community, having some kind of a social media platform to announce and show people what we're doing and highlight those good things. So even if funding was slashed, it would be something that we would still figure out a way to do and to work around. Now, with these one-time funds that we get, that's the really cool money that we can do and use in a positive manner to buy equipment, like buying iPads for every one of our team members, to buying sound stage equipment to be able to highlight some of the socials that we do, engaging in partnerships with different companies that we could use, for a term for that contract to be able to highlight those kinds of things too. And so that's just the extra we get to do because we know that funding might leave. I might not be able to buy personnel out of that because it will term and we don't want to do layoffs and terminations and those kinds of things. But equipment, contracts, professional services are some really great things that we can utilize those funds for. So again, just if you have priorities, you just stick with those priorities and make sure that you figure out a way to do it.
So I think there's a lot of open source material. So I think it is being a collaborator, what's available, that is in an open space that is not costly. Those shared resources that we can come in together and be putting in best practice areas. And then I think looking at what are the potential grant funding sources that we have. And then how do we use even some of our title funds that are dedicated for parental involvement, or some of our title funds that are meant to be used to create smarter cyber spaces for our students, how we can be totally maximizing those dollars.
So now that technology has exploded and our use of it has just become more pervasive in the last few years, our budgeting needs are even greater. For us, we're looking at a 15-year bond package that's going to have a technology piece that grows by about 10% a year. If you have the ability to bake that into a bond or a referendum, wherever you are, it's probably a good idea to do that. On the flip side of that, since now this is the expectation of us in the education realm, we're going to need to ask our funding agencies, in particular our legislators, to make sure that they dedicate funding for technology the way that they would for capital improvement projects or salaries and benefits. It's just going to be something that keeps growing, hopefully at a linear rate and not exponentially like it has the last 3 years.